Thank everybody for staying tight. My name is Olani Ajilore. I'm the reference daily news publisher. And my co-host is Tunde Akigbondere. He's a staff writer and also an author. We have in our midst a special guest who need no introduction, but for some people that might be seeing him for the first time, we have in our midst Mr. Femi Falana. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria and one of the foremost Nigerian human rights lawyer with a revolutionary drive to bring some radical changes in the status quo. He's a passionate believer in affordable justice for the rich and the poor. He holds the opinion that the Nigerian justice system is deeply established on the capitalist and relative system of oppression in place. He believes law should be the instrument of justice. He has made waves as the chairman of the West African Bar Association. And the latest of his stride was the successful legal battle for the acquittance of 70 Nigerian soldiers sentenced to death for allegedly committing mutiny. Please, everybody, wanted to meet Mr. Femi Falana. So we're going to be asking you some questions. We're going to start by my co-host, Tunde.
Wow. Thanks for actually gracing the occasion, sir. I want to especially appreciate you for actually coming around this evening to engage us with respect to most pressing issue as to the state of our Nigerian state. As a matter of fact, we welcome you, sir. So without actually wasting much of our time on the platform this evening, I want to throw this question to you, sir. As a foremost Nigerian human rights crusader, I would like you to actually do a brief commentary on the state of the Nigerian state. As a matter of fact, yeah, that's going to be our first question on the platform this evening. What's the state of Nigerian state, according to you, sir, and with the way you've actually seen things happening in Nigeria, sir?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to cross-fertilize ideas with you and your audience. Let me say, first of all, that the state of the nation is nothing to write home about. From the economic front, our country houses the largest poverty-stricken people in the world. So Nigeria is said to be the capital of poverty in the world. The economic program being pursued by the government, and I'm talking of the neoliberal policies dictated by the IMF and World Bank, are pauperizing our people. These policies are increasing poverty index, as going out borrowing. The government is not listening to even its own advisors. Just a few days ago, the chief economic advisor to the president, Dr. Salami, came out, and I think out of frustration, to advise against more borrowing by the government. And of course, you all know that borrowing is more. So the government is piling up debts. And you only can see the purpose of the debts. And we have said publicly that if the government was committed to the anti-corruption crusade, by now, the country will have been able to raise enough funds, to recover enough funds, to prosecute projects in the country and take care of social services. Take, for instance, in October 2018, the Supreme Court ordered the government to collect royalties that were not collected for 18 years, from oil majors, the IOCs. Of course, the government made a demand. Government came, hired some consultants to find out what this, the totality of the fund. The consultant, the economic the auditors came up with a figure of $62 billion. The government made a demand for the payment of the money. But as soon as the oil companies kicked, that was the end of the matter. Very soon we are going to take up this matter in court with a view to compelling the government to collect this fund. Now, I can go on and on and on. You know, recently, the Alliance on Surviving COVID-19 and Beyond, ASCAP, wrote to the Minister of Finance that the government could recover 94 trillion naira, either stolen funds, funds criminally diverted, or money, you know, wasting all over the place. But up to now, the government has not even acknowledged the receipt of the letter. Of course, if you also think about the war on terror, insecurity, the worsening security in the country, again, you ask yourself whether the government is committed to the eradication of terrorism. In April this year, in May this year, the Attorney General of the country did say that the government has a list of 400 sponsors of terror. A few days later, it was announced that about 800 terror suspects were going to be tried. Up to now, none of them has been arraigned in court. You know, and of course, with respect to insecurity in other parts of the country, you wonder whether the government is committed, because up to now, the necessary gadgets, including trackers, have not been acquired by the government. Drones have not been acquired by the government, and Nigeria has some of the largest cities in the world without CCTV cameras. So how do you secure people without the necessary gadgets? And that is not to talk about social insecurity, because when people are talking about security in Nigeria, or they talk of kidnapping and the rest of them, nobody is talking of social insecurity. That we are producing many graduates of tertiary institutions and secondary schools every year, you know, hundreds of thousands, and nobody is thinking of getting employment for them, you know. So that is why the state of the nation is very disturbing. And of course, if Nigerians have more freedom, if they have more opportunities to contribute their quota to the development of the country, again, the crisis of poverty in the country will have been much, much addressed. For instance, the government banned Twitter. It's over 100 days now, and the country has lost over 100 billion naira, you know, because many people, you know, run their businesses through Twitter. So, and that's apart from the fact that the government arrests and detain people recklessly if you criticize the government. Again, if you have no freedom, if your liberty is taken, there's no way you can contribute meaningfully to the economic development of the country. So the state of the nation is very, very bad. We are living in a perilous time. Wow. And so we all need to work together, you know, to restore normalcy in our country. Thank you.
Wow, that's just too beautiful, sir. And thanks for that kind of wonderful statement. On the platform this evening, we've got to discover the kind of situation the Femi Falana has been able to discuss with us on the platform this evening. But at this point, sir, I think it is actually reasonable to talk about some of the track records of your kind of personality in the system. We've always been going, you know, around hunting for most of the stories of your activities. We've had a lot of things about some of the things you've been doing for the past couple of days as to actually bringing a kind of difference in Nigeria. One of them was actually in respect to, you know, the action you actually took by championing the movement towards the sustenance of the rights of the medical doctors in Nigeria who have chosen to be in an indefinite strike, owing to the fact that the Nigerian government has not been up to the task in respect to actually paying them, or in fact, giving them most of the things they should have access to, as a matter of fact. So I'd like to ask you, sir, that what actually inspired this kind of initiative out of you, or what gave you the reason why you should actually stand for most of those victimized medical doctors?
Well, you have to appreciate that we're also involved in political mobilization in our country. We want to give people hope. We want to ensure that people get justice. And we want to ensure that the rights of our people are not trampled upon. There are a group of doctors, the resident doctors, who are fighting to improve the health situation in the country. Most of our hospitals are commodores, and the government itself agrees with the fact that the state of our health is very, very bad. Hence, the president and other top government officials, as well as members of the bourgeoisie, rush abroad for medical treatment, while they leave the rest of our people, to die even of common preventable diseases. So when doctors strike in such a situation, demanding for better conditions of service, demanding for equipment in our hospitals, we have a duty to help them. And that is why we are, Commodore Femi Falana and I, as well as Chief Robinson Ario, have teamed up to ensure that no doctor is jailed for embarking on strike in Nigeria. You cannot afford to criminalize strike or industrial action in our country. And we are very confident that the doctors will win their battle at the end of it.
Wow,
Thank you so much,
wow, that's just too beautiful, sir. That's beautiful. I think I would like to actually drive this before we actually go to the next session of this very interview. And it is still in respect to the idea of the striking resident doctors. So I want you to be aware of the fact that there is a court order stopping most of those medical doctors from, continuing with the strike. Are you actually saying continue with the strike, at the full phase of a statement from the court, stopping them from actually going on the strike is actually justifiable? Or are you encouraging the disobedience of the order of the court in respect to the striking resident doctors, sir?
I will not encourage any disobedience of court orders, because in any country where the rule of law operates, we must ensure that the orders of court are complied with. In this case, the initial order was that both parties were ordered by the court to end hostilities. And that meant both the government and the doctor, the NARD, National Association of Resident Doctors, were asked to return to the negotiation table and ensure that the issues that led to the strike were addressed. The government has not been forthcoming in this regard. So the order made yesterday was to defer that the doctors should return to work without saying anything about the cause of the strike. And so the doctors have immediately advised us to approach the Court of Appeal to challenge the order and then to file a motion for stay of execution. That will be done on Monday morning, But at the same time, we are also reaching out to the government to let the government appreciate the need to call off this strike as soon as possible. That is the position.
Tunde, I think you are mute. If you can check your mic. Okay, we can hear you now.
So it is actually reasonable at this point to have my very good host throw some questions actually, as we actually launch ourselves to the next section of this very interview. So my host, sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tunde. So we're going to just digress a little bit. The Yoruba Nation activist, Sunday Adeyemo, had his house raided by the operatives of the DSS. He was also caught and arrested while trying to escape through Benin Republic to Germany. He appears to have lost hope in the recently, and he started calling for his return to Nigeria. What do you think is the implication of his being repatriated?
Well, as I did say, when his house was invaded in the dead of the night by the State Security Service, that action was not authorized by law. It is not permitted under the Nigerian legal system. Happily, the court, the Oyo State High Court, delivered a landmark judgment yesterday to the effect that the raid carried out by the State Security Service cannot be justified under the law, and that therefore the government was ordered to pay him a colossal reparation of 20 billion naira, even though the government has indicated its wish to appeal. But it's a very timely judgment. And I'm very convinced that the judgment has come very handy, will be very handy with respect to Israel in Benin Republic. If the court in Nigeria said that no offense was committed and that it's not a criminal offense to demand for to exercise your right to self-determination, I think these are very weighty views expressed by the court. And I think the government should have gone back to the drawing table to re-strategize and leave Chief Sunday Igboho alone. I think from the information at my disposal, no request has been submitted to the government of Benin Republic for his extradition to Nigeria. I think it was just an illegal request that was made, and no court will entertain an illegal request to deport or extradite anybody from his territory. And Benin Republic, as you very well know, operates under the rule of law. And so I'm confident that with the judgment that has just been delivered in Nigeria, that his chances of regaining his freedom are very bright. And of course, the government will have to draw some lessons here. As I did say, you cannot engage in rendition, as was the case with respect to Mr. Nnamdi Kanu. I mean, Kenya and Nigeria have bilateral relations. Kenya and Nigeria have extradition treaties. Kenya and Nigeria have signed mutual legal assistance treaty. And so if you wanted to deport or extradite Mr. Kanu from Kenya, the government ought to have followed the rule of law. Unfortunately, that was not done. And happily, Mr. Kanu has now approached a court in Kenya, challenging his extradition, illegal extradition from that country. Again, because of, I also made a point in the case of Chief Igboho that he could not be extradited in Nigeria without going through due process. And it's the same position I've maintained in the case of the police officer that is wanted in the United States of America, Mr. Abakiari. I've made a point that he cannot be just arrested on the street and deported to the US. There has to be an extradition request, which will have to be processed through the Federal High Court. That is the position of the law.
Wow. It was also reported in the media that you accepted to be a counsel to the controversial Commodore Adewunmi, who was fearlessly spilled the beans on the channel television show. What really transpired on your following him when he was invited?
Well, Commodore Adewunmi is not a controversial figure. Granted an interview expressing his freedom of exercising his freedom of expression under the law, under the Constitution. When he was invited, I was contacted, I was briefed by him to represent him, and I was convinced that again, based on my relationship with the military, I defend quite a number of the officers and other members of the armed forces. I knew that what he was saying was the truth, and nothing but the truth. And so I was convinced that he hadn't breached any law or committed any offense. Hence, I agreed to accompany him, to the Defense Intelligence Agency, which wanted him. And we're there, they were quite polite, they were civilized. And at the end of the day, he was allowed to go, and that if they needed to contact him in future, they will not hesitate to do so. And I think this is how it should be. And I do hope that the State Security Service, the Nigerian Police Force, and others will learn, from this experience. That you do not need to harass Nigerians, you do not need to intimidate Nigerians or subject them to torture, in order to get them to be patriotic. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. You once also reacted to the viral story that have to do with the police deputy, Abba Kayari, who was presented before the police for his complicity in a fraudulent deal involving one Ramon Abbas, aka Hush Puppy, and Shubuso Vincent. The committee consisted of to investigate the allegation was said to have had its finding rejected once. Don't you think this is another direct means through which the Nigerian state likes to frustrate the due prosecution of the police deputy by the FBI?
No, I would not think so, because ours is a sovereign nation and we have our own laws in place. And if a police officer is alleged to have committed an offense, the system, the law requires that he be investigated under our own law. And I think that is what has been done. We do hope that justice will be done to him at the end of the day. Even though the police Minister of Police Affairs was alleged a couple of days ago to say that the president would determine his fate. No, the president has nothing to do with it. It is the Police Service Commission that will take a decision having regard to his rank in the police force. And if he has to be extradited to the United States of America, it is the duty of the Attorney General to file the extradition proceeding, extradition application before the Federal High Court. The president has nothing to do with it. So this must not be made a presidential matter. We don't need the intervention of the president as far as the law is concerned. So again, I'm very convinced beyond any shadow of doubt that once the Police Service Commission takes its decision and the United States of America submits an application for its extradition, that will be processed through the Federal High Court. But the United States should not expect Nigeria to hand over any citizen without going through the court of law.
Excellent, sir. Tunde?
The United States of America will not hand over any American without an extradition, proceeding in court.
That's
wow.
That's right.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for such a wonderful contribution on the platform. It's such a nice time with you, and you're kind of, distinct person, as a matter of fact. So the next question we are going to be asking is actually in respect to one of the Nigerian activists that you've not been able to talk about since we've actually started talking with us since morning. You've successfully talked about Nnamdi Kanu, you talked about Sunday Go and so many other guys who have consistently been fighting the relative system of oppression in place in Nigeria. But at this point in time, I think it is actually reasonable for us to talk about your very good client, Omoyele Sowore, who has actually been restricted to Abuja for the past couple of years, owing to the fact that he stood out to fight oppression, he stood out to fight, the system of, the dangerous killing innovations in Nigeria. So I'd like to ask, sir, that what's the fate of Omoyele Sowore currently, not when he lost his brother not quite long, as a result of, the insecurity that is rife in the Nigerian state. I'd like to ask that what is his fate currently, sir?
Well, as you are well aware, Mr. Omoyele Sowore led a group that wanted to stage a protest on August 5, 2019. He was arrested on the eve of the protest, even though the protest took place in many states of the Federation. Right. The government was disturbed by the protest, and so he was captured and taken to Lagos and then taken to Abuja, where he was detained, even though the government has no evidence to back up any charge, to justify any charge against him. He was charged with treasonable felony, money laundering, stalking, that he was insulting the president, and so on and so forth. We filed the necessary applications and the government was forced to withdraw the charge of money laundering and stalking, that was abusing the president. I thought that was very primitive, in this age and time. So the two charges were withdrawn. So it's only left with treasonable felony. But again, the court, because of the severity of the offense, alleged offense, the court decided to restrict its movement to Abuja. We had thought initially that the government would speed up the trial, but we are now, we have come to the conclusion now that the government is not ready for the trial. Hence, we are approaching the Court of Appeal any moment from now to ask for variation of the orders so that Mr. Showore can regain his freedom while the case is pending. After all, in our country, those who have stolen billions of naira are allowed to travel abroad all over the world. And so why shouldn't Mr. Showore be allowed, to enjoy his freedom in the interim? So that's what we're doing next week, hopefully.
Wow. That's just too beautiful, sir. And we want to actually, since this medium, to appreciate most of those, selfless services and most of your leadership characters that have successfully, championed a kind of revolution in the system and is consistently holding our leaders accountable. So, but at this point, I think I have a question. And this question is actually in respect to what we are aware of. It is a very popular question in the Nigerian state. It is actually in respect to the Twitter ban and the desperate disposition of the federal government of Nigeria to stop or even cow people from actually communicating their opinions, freely on the social media. So at this point in time, sir, I'd like to ask, that was your perspective about Twitter ban? And what do you think it is? What do you think is the aim of the federal government for actually stopping people from expressing their opinions via this particular medium in Nigeria?
Well, as I did say, Nigeria has lost over 100 billion naira because of the illegal suspension of Twitter in Nigeria. But I won't be able to dwell more on the details of the ban because we have a case pending before the ECOWAS court in Abuja. This case was filed by SERA, the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, as well as some other human rights bodies, including Amnesty International, as well as Media Rights Agenda that have successfully applied to join the case in court. But in the interim, the ECOWAS court has granted an order restraining the government from charging anybody before any court for accessing or for using Twitter in Nigeria, and that is the position. So the case is adjourned to later this month, and that is the substantive case, and we are very sure that justice will be done in the case. Thank you.
That's just too beautiful, sir. But sir, I like to actually reflect on this too, because we are aware of the fact that the federal government is already negotiating with the owner of Twitter, and they've actually promised us that this platform is going to be open for the use of Nigerians in a few days' time or a few months' time, whichever. Do you think the negotiation with this particular organization or with the owner of this particular, medium is actually necessary? Not even when the federal government is actually desperate about, cowing the system and at the same time stopping people from expressing their opinion. Do you think it is necessary at this time?
Well, as I did say, we are losing a lot of money through the ban, through the irresponsible ban, and because the government is under pressure, hence the negotiations that are going on. At the end of the day, the government is going to ask Twitter to register in Nigeria and then give us some, guidelines. Of course, if those guidelines are not acceptable to Twitter, it may have to do business elsewhere to the detriment of our people, particularly young people in the country who carry on their businesses, through Twitter, So, but at the end of the day, we're also sure of victory in the court, So at the end of the day, we're sure that government will be compelled to lift the suspension if the talks do not reach any conclusive, any favorable conclusion. Yeah.
Wow, thank you, sir. So this is my last question for this session, and it's actually in respect to the perspective of 2023 and what people have been coming up with as ideas. A lot of people have come to say 2023 is going to be a very tough time, that the use of the system would come up to champion a kind of difference in the political system, in the leadership of the country, as a matter of fact. But in some climes too, there are a lot of arguments in respect to actually repackaging a former president of Nigeria and the person of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan by the APC party to come and actually champion the kind of difference that we want, and to as well come complete what he has started maybe earlier before he was thrown out of office. So what's your perspective about this? Do you think Jonathan is the solution to the problem of Nigeria, or what we're actually facing currently, sir? Do you think 2023 is going to be a different era in this country with Goodluck Ebele Jonathan?
Well, I'm not going to talk about PDP and APC because they are birds of the same feather. They are two sides of a coin, and both parties are prepared to further destroy our country. So the challenge before the Nigerian people is to work towards a credible alternative political party. I belong to an organization, Alliance on Surviving COVID-19 and Beyond, and we are collaborating with genuine progressive forces in the country to launch an alternative political party that will address poverty, that will address unemployment in our country, that will address insecurity, and ensure that our country, the glory of our country is restored. So that's what we are working towards, and we're not concerned. We're not, it's not our business to discuss Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, who was defeated in 2015 because of lack of performance, So if the APC wants to go for him again, as I said, why should that surprise you, after all, Mr. Femi Falana has just returned to base, So why should that bother anybody? I was just reading this afternoon that APD or PDP joins APC, and that details later, you know what I mean? That these parties are the same, Mr. Falana left APC for PDP, now he's back to APC. Why should anybody be bothered over that? But I think the Nigerian people, young people, the youths, are prepared this time around to reject the dangerous political forces that are destroying our country, that have arrested the development of our country. And I think very soon, these political forces will see the handwriting, will be forced to read the handwriting of them.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. My understanding of what we've been able to actually discuss on the platform this evening is that we should not expect the best of leadership from those two political parties, not just because they are parties, but because they've actually, grown deeply into themselves, that it is going to be very difficult for something good to come out of their Jerusalem, as a matter of fact. And I want to reckon that, and we look forward to actually seeing this kind of, passionate movement for transformation, for leadership, and, the party that would actually bring this kind of innovation is what we expect in Nigeria. So without actually wasting much of our time, I think it is actually reasonable to throw the gala of this interview session to my very good host, who's going to be asking the last question on the platform this evening. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, today. So, sir, we want to ask this question, which obviously we know the answer for the kind of person that you are. Are you in any way scared of the federal government, most especially after you frustrated the attempt to unjustly terminate the lives of soldiers?
No fear, no, not at all. I would like to say that I'm just doing my work under the law. I operate under the rule of law. And so I have the right, or every accused person is entitled to a lawyer of his or her choice. And so I bear my name, Falana, but I mind my own business. But people come to me with their problems, and I try to address them. The case of the soldiers was very unfortunate. These were young people who were asking for weapons to fight terror. I mean, to prosecute the counter-insurgency operation. But those who wanted to use them as sacrificial lambs, who had stolen the money, who had diverted money meant to procure arms and ammunition, decided to arraign them and gave the impression that they were sabotaging the war. We put up a defense for them, which was rejected. At the end of the day, they were sentenced to death. Sentenced to death. We took up the matter and pursued, until the authorities saw, reason in our representation made on their behalf. Hence, the death sentence was commuted to 10 years imprisonment. They've just completed the 10 years imprisonment, and I've written to the president to pardon them in exercise of his powers under Section 175 of the Constitution, because the regime is currently granting pardon, absolute pardon, unconditional pardon to terrorists who are alleged to have, repented. And not only are they being forgiven, they are also being rehabilitated by the regime. And so for us, if you can do that to criminal elements who have killed people, who have bombed people, who have bombed buildings, and kidnapped children, kidnapped people, committed rape and other crimes against humanity, on what ground are you not going to pardon the soldiers, who are patriotic, who have made, necessary sacrifice in defense of our country? So I'm not worried, and the government knows, and many of the guys in government were also at court to provide legal services to them, including, the President Muhammadu Buhari. He was once detained by the Babangida junta for 3 years, and nobody will speak out for him because he had detained the politicians of the Second Republic. He had jailed journalists and detained many of them, and some of us were also detained too, by the Buhari junta. And so nobody was going to speak out for him. But we had to, on the ground that if the military president, Ibrahim Babangida, could detain a former head of state, a former deputy head of state for 3 years, what will happen to the rest of the society? And so we took up the matter. And of course, both of them were released from illegal custody. We first saw at cause to take up the case of the ANPP, led by General Muhammadu Buhari and others, when the Obasanjo regime disrupted their rally in Kano in May 2003. I mean, I was briefed by the leaders of the party, including General Muhammadu Buhari, as it then was, to approach the court and challenge police permit for rallies in Nigeria. We won the case in 2003. The police appeal, we won the appeal. And so that has forced the Nigerian, the legislators to enact, to amend the necessary laws to compel police to provide security during protests. So that's where we are. So it's going to be difficult for them. I think they will run into moral crisis to harass me. And I've also been in the system for too long, And as I did tell you, I was detained by General Muhammadu Buhari. He left me in detention. Babangida released me. Babangida left me in detention. Wow. I think it was Shoneku that released me. So they know I'm not scared of any regime. They know that. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. As we promised, we will not take much of your time. We just want to appreciate you for even honoring our invitation. I know you're a very, very busy man. Just to take it away, so now the 2023 is approaching. We can see the politicians are running around, they're gagging around. Is there any advice you have for the Nigerian watching right now? What do you think? Because I know there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of people are confused on who to believe. So what's your advice for Nigerians?
Well, in the first place, I would like to advise Nigerians who are losing hope or who have lost confidence in the country to appreciate that Nigeria remains a potentially great country. And what is before patriotic citizens is how to realize the potentiality of the country. This is the largest Black nation on earth. We have the largest market in Africa, and so we can work together to banish poverty. We have abundant human and natural resources. You find Nigeria all over the world, contributing their quota to the development of many countries. So if we have, if we can organize our country along positive and progressive socioeconomic system, the sky is the limit for Nigeria. And I can tell you that. I'm very confident about that. And so I'm going to advise Nigerians not to swallow hook, line, and sinker the message of doom that will be regurgitated once again by the leaders of the APC and the PDP. Nigerians should be working towards a credible alternative. There are decent, there are honest, there are dedicated Nigerians, there are patriotic Nigerians that will be ready to move this country forward. We must begin to ensure that the next political campaign is issue-based. We must compel politicians to address how to move the country forward along Chapter 2 of the Constitution. How do we realize the socioeconomic crisis of our people? How do we realize? How do we banish poverty from our country? How do we address the problem of insecurity and all the rights guaranteed? In Chapter 2, it has to be, I must say this, cannot be realized for the majority of our people under a neo-colonial peripheral capitalist system. And that is why we must begin to address, the socialist option, which insists that the resources of the country be managed by the people, for the people, and in the interest of the people. I thank you once again for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. And I want to say a big thank you, and thanks to all of our listeners. And you say have a wonderful weekend, sir, and God bless.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. And Tunde, thank you.
Are you there?
Has Tunde left?
No, he's there.
Oh, thank you, sir. What's good to sir?
Okay,
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Tunde sufficiently harassed me to make sure that I honor this invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You are very grateful. We'll be inviting you soon again.
No problem. I will honor your invitation. I assure you of that.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
God bless and good night.